Hello?
Dan, Jon Taffer here.
Jon Taffer, it's an honor and a pleasure.
It's my honor too, buddy. Nice to talk with you. So
nice to talk to you as well.
So are you in Connecticut now as we speak?
Yes, I am.
Gotcha. Well, I've had a lot of family in Stamford, and I've spent a lot of time in Westport, and I love your state, buddy. It's a beautiful state.
Thank you.
And that whole area of the country is actually beautiful. Dan, we've been talking about this whole issue of divisiveness on the podcast. And I think that now with the election over, no matter who wins the White House, with the Senate in hands of one party and maybe the White House in the hands of another party, I'm sensing that this might be a time for us to sort of end divisiveness a little bit and post-election. And I'm curious, you're in Connecticut, and how are you feeling right now? I mean, let's assume Biden wins, or let's assume Trump wins, and let's assume either way that the election is clean, that there's no recount BS. Let's assume that the election is over. And you feel good that it's a fair election. What are you feeling after that, Dan? Is this the time to stop the divisiveness or not? Are you still feeling that divisive attitude?
I think it's time to put a stop to it. Enough's enough. I mean, I sit back and I look at the grand scheme of things, and we have just become a nation that is so obsessed with red, blue, left, right, Republican, Democratic. Enough's enough. Look, if Biden wins, at the end of the day, I live here. I don't want the president to fail. If he fails, we all fail. I want him to succeed. He may not be my ideal choice, but that doesn't mean I don't want the man to fail, because then we all fail. We're in this together. And I really think it's time to stop the fighting, to stop the hate. I mean, somewhere along the way, we became so obsessed with politics that we forgot how to be human beings to one another.
Yeah. So
and
Dan,
it's ridiculous.
It is, buddy, and I completely agree with you, Dan. So what do you do as an individual to make that happen? I'm guessing, because we all do, I'm guessing you have friends that you've had some political disagreements over the past few months, maybe some family members you've had. Do we reach out to each other now? What do you do, Dan, in your little world right around you to change this?
I definitely want to reach out to friends and family members that have had differences with me with political views in the past. There's no reason we cannot be friends. There's no reason we cannot still love our family members. We need to come together. We're all struggling right now. We're dealing with a pandemic that is gripping this country and the world. And, it's looking like it's not going to get any easier anytime soon. 2020 has been such an insane year. It's time to put our differences to the side, find some common ground, and be united again and work together to make a better America for all of us.
Dan, I think I could not have said it better, buddy. I'm with you 100%. So the second line of what you're saying, and I know we agree on this together, is it's now up to us to be proactive as individuals, to reach out to somebody we've had an argument with, to maybe change our attitudes online, right? And to be proactive ourselves individually to move this dynamic in each of our own worlds. And then we can change it for everyone. I'm sure you agree with that, buddy.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely. The change starts with us. We have to be better. We have to do better. We need to act better. This lashing out at one another and, you're wrong because you don't agree with me. And, well, that's my opinion. And you don't agree with me, so I don't want to hear what you have to say. That has to stop. We need to find some common ground. It's too much.
And the fact that the election was so strong on both sides, Trump got more votes than he did last time, 67 million, and Joe Biden winning by about 3 million votes or so, which is substantial. Don't get me wrong. I'm not denying that. But he still only polled in 50.5% of America. So my point is that both sides are half of America. So to diminish the other side and to suggest that they're meaningless or trivial or insignificant just isn't smart when we look at this election. So there's a great reason for us to come together, because it isn't a small minority that feels one way or another. It's half the country that feels one way or the other. So I'm with you, buddy. So I'm going to go out and make a few calls, reach out to some friends today. Will you do the same?
I definitely will, John. And I want to say before you let me go, your interview with Trump was fantastic. And John, I would love if you ran for office. I really think the country needs you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that, buddy. Well, we'll see how that goes, but I appreciate you saying it to me. And take care. Stay safe.
You too, John. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Well, Corey, that couldn't have been a more perfect call. So think about where Dan is. Dan's in a liberal area of the country, and he completely agrees. It's time. It's enough, boy. Aren't you tired of this?
I'm done. I'm done, John.
Yeah, I'm fatigued to hell from all this stuff. So, I agree with Dan. I think that was a great attitude. Okay, so Dan was in Connecticut. Let's go to the other side of the country, to a more conservative type of a state, and let's see, what the opinion is there. So, do we have any callers from Texas?
We do. Let's jump over to Chris. He's in Amarillo, Texas.
Perfect.
This is Chris.
Chris, Jon Taffer here.
Hi, thanks for reaching out.
My pleasure. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing fine, thanks. So, Chris, you're in Amarillo, Texas, which I've been to many times. I forget the interstate that goes through Amarillo. Is it 40?
40 and 27, but 40 is the one that is nationwide.
Yep, I'll be there in a couple of days, buddy. On my way to Alpharetta, Georgia, I'll be driving through Amarillo. But it's
very nice.
It's a wonderful part of America. It's a patriotic red, white, and blue Texas all-America part of the country. Chris, we were talking on a podcast today, and I'm really curious to hear your opinion about now that the election is. Let's pretend for a moment, Chris, that the election was over. And let's pretend for a moment.
I wish.
Yeah, I wish too. Let's pretend for a moment that either Biden or Trump wins the White House for just a moment. And let's assume that the Republicans keep the Senate for just a moment. And let's assume that the election ends and that we feel good about it. We don't feel there's any cheating. The election has been recounted or whatever. It's now clean. And we feel good about it. And now the election is behind us. Do you see this as an opportunity to end divisiveness between us all now?
It leaves you an opportunity, certainly an opportunity to do so. I think what you're proposing is something that is not going to happen in 2020 or even moving forward into the future. And that even includes someone like myself. I mean, I think there's just blatant cheating in what's going on right now. And me personally, I'm just thankful that AOC isn't 35 years old, because it would have been a much different race.
So let's assume for a moment that you felt that and look, there's a lot of people that have your position. I try to be non-political, buddy, on this podcast, but I agree with you. I agree with you that there's very suspect activities in some of these states, and I agree that every American should know that their vote counted and that a non-legitimate vote did not, because every non-legitimate vote cancels out your vote, right, Chris? So that's completely unreasonable.
That is.
So I think every American wants to know that every legal ballot is counted and that every illegal ballot is not. And I'd be shocked to hear any American publicly suggest that they wanted anything. Let's assume for a moment, Chris, that did happen. And let's assume for a moment Trump wins the White House and the election is clean. Is that an opportunity to end divisiveness?
Again, it's an opportunity, but just with what I've seen year to date, not even really year to date, but let's call it since St. Patrick's Day, the other side, I mean, they're just not going to open up to that. They not only don't want 4 more years of Trump, they're just demanding that their side go ahead and win. I mean, so to answer your question, it's an opportunity, but I just don't see how that's ever going to happen.
I find your view interesting, and I think it's a view that's very typical of your part of the country, because it's interesting how it skews part of the country. Let me flip it on you for a moment. Chris.
Well, can I add one thing real quick?
Sure.
I live in Amarillo. I've lived in Amarillo on and off for almost 10 years, but I went to college in Nebraska. I lived in Atlanta for 5 years. I love Alpharetta, by the way.
Thank you.
And I lived in Denver for several years. The best financial times of my career have been in blue states. But and I live in Amarillo for a different career opportunity than I'm in now. But I've lived in blue states. I've lived in red, and I plan on spending the bulk of my career in Amarillo moving forward. But I just wanted to give you that before you moved on to your next point.
Gotcha. Let's assume for a moment that Biden wins. So Biden has the White House, okay, and Republicans have the Senate. Now, I've read and done a bunch of homework on this. When the Senate is in the hand of one party and the presidency is in the hand of another party, it tends to force them to work with the other side. versus being on one party, right? So having a Republican Senate and a Republican presidency could move it a little farther right than many Americans like, and the same thing if we had a liberal president and liberal Senate. So let's assume that we have divided government now. Just play with me for a second, Chris. So we have a Republican Senate,
Sure.
Democratic president. And let's assume for the moment Biden gives a speech and says, I'm going to go to the other side. This is a chance to be bipartisan. Let's forgive each other. Let's move forward. Would you have an open mind to that?
I would have. I can sit here and say I would. I can't believe everybody under Biden, and I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I don't think Biden will be president come March 1st. If he's deemed winner and he's sworn in January 20th, they will find him mentally incompetent, and he'll be out of there in a matter of weeks.
So, in essence, and this is very powerful, Chris, because I think there's many, many, many Americans who feel like you do. So what you're saying is over these past 6 or 7 months, you've lost trust for the other side to the point that it's going to take them time to rebuild that trust with you. So you are very skeptical. Fair?
Oh, absolutely fair. I mean, the moment the bricks started hitting the buildings and people started rioting, and you have major media outlets, and I'm not going to name anybody, who are calling that peaceful protest. I mean, it's going to take more than 4 years. Even if it's 4 years that somewhat mirrors what Trump was able to accomplish in terms of bringing back the economy and many other things that Trump has brought back, I would still be skeptical. And it would take a hell of a lot more than even what Trump did for me to even think about voting for them in 2024.
Well, I appreciate your opinion. I respect it hugely, and I think it's wonderful that you've shared it with all of us, Chris, because I think there's a lot of Americans that feel the way that you do, and it's going to take some time to rebuild that trust back. And it's not only up to the politicians to do it; it's up to each of us to do it now, and try to find reasons in each other.
And I understand that. It's just for me the one. Or I shouldn't say the one, but the rare blue voters out in here in Potter County and here in Amarillo, they're just so outspoken. And to me, they don't have facts when they're trying to debate. They want to get into an argument, but then they don't bring anything to the table. So it's hard to even try and see eye to eye with them. So that's just what I've kind of run into over these last 7-8 months. And, the world's completely changed.
So there we go, Chris. So I appreciate your view, buddy, and thanks for reaching out to the podcast. And
absolutely.
And stay safe, my friend.
You too, John.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Now, see, Corey, isn't that fascinating? That's a completely different view.
Yeah.
So here is obviously a conservative by the things that he said. It wasn't hard to see that, who feels that he just won't trust.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking at some of the riots in the cities, and I can understand. I don't necessarily agree with him.
Yeah.
But I can understand how he feels that way.
And some people they're broken. They can't take it anymore,
Yeah. Honestly, Corey, when I saw the other day, I'm watching the news, and I forget if I was watching CNN or I watched them all, by the way. I watched CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News because I want to make certain I want to make certain I'm not slanted in what I hear, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel if I can mix what comes into my brain, I can mix what comes out of my brain.
Right.
So, and I was looking at all of these cities that are boarded up because of the election in anticipation of riots. That's horrible. When you think that here in America, not only do we have riots, but we anticipate them, we expect them to happen. Yeah. I mean, that premise in and of itself, to expect a riot, is horrifying. So I understand that has had a huge impact on Chris in Texas. Mm-hmm. I get it. His conservative views, law and order, blah, 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 blah. I get it. He's like besides himself over this. I get it. But, when you look at Dan in Connecticut, I get his view too.
Right.
His view is, it is what it is. It's time to move on. And then you wonder if Dan's view of moving on now, would that end the violence sooner? And then would Chris come on board? Mm-hmm. So is Dan the first step, the guy who's going to reach out now? And then is Chris the second step, almost say, I want to see a little bit, and then I'll maybe come on board too. But it's fascinating. 2 Americans, 2 sides of the country, 2 completely different views.